The silence has a weight to it now. I can feel it pressing down on the furniture, settling in the corners of rooms that used to be filled with his laughter. It's been 47 days. I count them every morning. A small, private ritual of strength. 47 days, since I promised myself I wouldn't break, wouldn't reach out. Everyone tells you this is the way. This is how you reclaim yourself, how you take back your power after a man decides your life together is over. You build a fortress of silence and you learn to live inside it, to find peace in the quiet. I thought I was succeeding. I really did. For 47 days, I believed this quiet was the sound of healing. But now I'm not so sure. It happened last night, in that hollow, blue-lit hour when the world is asleep and your thoughts are at their loudest. I was scrolling through my phone, not looking for anything in particular, just trying to numb my mind until sleep would take me. And then I saw it, a picture he was tagged in, posted by a mutual acquaintance. It was a group shot at some casual dinner, nothing remarkable. He was smiling, a little tired around the eyes, but fine. My finger hovered, ready to scroll past, to honor my promise. But my eyes caught something in the background, a detail so small, so utterly insignificant to anyone else in the world. But it wasn't insignificant to me. It felt like a key turning in a lock I didn't even realize was there, a sudden, cold click in the stillness of my heart. My first thought, the one that always stings, was of another woman, but it wasn't that. I scanned every face, every shadow, and there was nothing to suggest it. This was different, the small detail in the background. It wasn't about his future, it was about our past. Specifically, it was about our last conversation, the one that ended everything. The one I've replayed in my mind 1,000 times, trying to pinpoint the exact moment it all fractured. The memory of his words, his face, the exhaustion in his voice. It all came rushing back, but this time, viewed through the new lens of this tiny, random detail in a photograph. And with that rush came a feeling I hadn't experienced yet, not anger, not sadness, but pure, chilling fear. Because this silence I've been so meticulously curating, this fortress I've been so proud of building, what if it's not a sanctuary? What if it's a prison of my own making? The advice everyone gives, the articles you read, the friends who tell you to have pride and stay away, they don't account for this. They don't account for the terrifying possibility that you were both wrong, that in your shared pain you both misunderstood something fundamental. I'm afraid this silence isn't healing anything at all. I'm terrified that with every passing day, every sunrise I greet with my resolve intact, I'm simply cementing the single greatest misunderstanding of my entire life, pushing a complicated, beautiful love further into a past from which it can never return. It's strange how the mind works, how it buries the beginning of things under the weight of their endings. But now, sitting in this quiet house, I find myself traveling back. I remember the day we met, not with a cinematic spark, but with a feeling of quiet recognition. It was at a friend's casual get-together, and I wasn't looking for anyone. I had grown comfortable in my own solitude, but he had this way of listening, not just waiting for his turn to speak, but truly hearing the spaces between my words. He didn't see a woman of a certain age with a history. He just saw me. It felt less like a beginning and more like a continuation of a conversation I didn't know I was waiting to have. The ease of it was disarming, a gentle unfolding. Our love wasn't built on grand gestures. It was assembled from 1,000 tiny, insignificant moments that became the foundation of everything. It was the way he'd leave a cup of coffee on my nightstand every morning, exactly how I liked it, without ever having to be asked. It was the silly dance he'd do in the kitchen while waiting for the pasta to boil, just to make me laugh after a long day. These weren't things you write poems about, but they were the things that built a home inside my heart. They were the quiet reassurances, the unspoken language that said, "I see you, I know you, I am here." How does a language so fluently spoken suddenly become a silence so profound and absolute? It doesn't make sense. I remember one particular afternoon. It must have been a year or so into our relationship. It was raining, one of those relentless autumn downpours that washes the world clean. We didn't do anything special. We stayed in, wrapped in old blankets on the sofa, reading our own books but with our feet tangled together. The only sounds were the turning of pages and the drumming of rain against the window pane. I recall looking at him, his face relaxed in concentration, and feeling a sense of peace so deep it felt like it had settled into my very bones. It was a feeling of being completely, utterly home, not in a house, but with a person. That feeling, it's the ghost that haunts these silent rooms now. A warmth I can almost touch, but can never quite hold. He saw the parts of me I tried so hard to hide. I've always been insecure about a small scar on my shoulder from a childhood accident, something I instinctively cover up. One evening, he traced its outline with his finger, so gently, and he didn't ask for the story behind it. He just said, "This is a part of your map. It's beautiful." He didn't try to fix my insecurities or dismiss them. He simply accepted them as part of me, as pieces of the whole person he loved. It was in those quiet moments of acceptance that I truly let my guard down, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. He gave me a safe harbor, a place where I didn't have to pretend to be stronger or more put together than I actually was. And that is what makes this silence so unbearable, so terrifying. It's not just the absence of his voice, it's the absence of that understanding. How could the same man who understood the map of my scars fail to understand my words in our very last conversation? How could I have failed to understand his? We built an entire world on a foundation of quiet knowing, of seeing each other clearly. For it all to crumble over a misunderstanding feels impossible, a betrayal of everything we were. And yet, this fear grows inside me, the chilling thought that maybe we weren't seeing each other at all in the end. Maybe we were just seeing the reflections of our own pain, and in doing so, we walked away from the only home I've ever truly known. Looking back, the signs were there, but they weren't the kind you read about in magazines. They weren't loud alarms or glaring red flags. They were whispers. A subtle shift in the way he'd say my name, the addition of a slight pause before he'd answer a simple question about his day. I remember one evening, he was telling a story to friends, a story we had lived together, but he told it as I, not we. It was a tiny thing, a slip of the tongue, perhaps, but it landed in my chest with a quiet thud. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was weaving a tapestry of anxieties out of a single loose thread. It's so easy to dismiss your own intuition when the truth it's pointing to is the one thing you can't bear to face. So I ignored it. I chose peace over truth. The silence between us used to be a comfort, a shared space of understanding that didn't need to be filled with noise. But it began to change. Slowly, it became something else. Something hollow. I'd catch myself watching him as he read a book or stared out the window, and I'd feel like I was on the outside looking in, separated by an invisible pane of glass. A quiet, desperate question started to echo in my mind. "What are you thinking?" I never asked it, of course. I was too afraid of the answer, or worse, of him telling me it was nothing, when I knew it was everything. I started to feel a profound sense of loneliness, not when I was by myself, but when I was sitting right next to him. That is a truly devastating kind of solitude. My own history began to work against me. I've been the woman who asks for too much, who feels too deeply, who wants reassurance that never comes. And I promised myself I would never be her again. So, when my instincts screamed that something was wrong, a louder voice in my head would whisper, "Don't be that woman. Don't create drama. Don't push him away with your neediness." I began to pathologize my own feelings, labeling my intuition as insecurity, my perception as paranoia. It was easier to believe I was broken than to believe we were. I meticulously built a case against my own heart, using past experiences as evidence that my feelings couldn't be trusted. I thought I was being strong and self-aware, but I was simply silencing the only voice that was trying to save us. And so, by the time we had that final catastrophic conversation, I was already primed for failure. I was armed with a deep-seated distrust of my own emotions. I heard his words, but they were filtered through layers of my own self-doubt. When he said he felt lost, I didn't hear a cry for help. I heard an accusation that I was the one who had made him lose his way. When he said he needed space, I didn't hear a request for breathing room. I heard the final closing of a door. I was reacting not to the man in front of me, the man I had loved for years, but to the ghosts of men who had come before. I was so terrified of being abandoned that I interpreted his pain as the first step of his departure, and I reacted accordingly. This instability had been growing for months. My sense of peace, the one I had cherished so deeply, had been replaced by a low-grade, constant hum of anxiety. I found myself replaying our interactions, searching for clues, for evidence to either confirm or deny the fears that were circling my mind. It was a quiet, internal torment. Did he hold my hand for a second less than usual? Was the tone in his "good morning" a little flatter today? It was an exhausting way to live, constantly searching for meaning in the mundane, turning every small moment into a referendum on our entire relationship. I was so focused on the fear of an ending that I stopped being present in the life we were still living, transforming our shared home into a silent courtroom where I was both prosecutor and judge. Now, remembering that tiny detail in the photograph, I see it all with a terrible clarity. The misunderstanding wasn't born in that one conversation. That was just where it finally broke the surface. The real misunderstanding was in all those preceding months of silence. I mistook my fear for intuition, and he, I suspect, mistook my quiet anxiety for a lack of affection or a growing distance. We were both drowning in our own separate insecurities, standing side by side but unable to reach for each other. We built a wall between us, brick by brick, with unspoken fears and unasked questions. And I'm just now realizing that this fortress of silence I've been living in for 47 days, I didn't build it after he left. I helped build it long before he ever walked out the door. And so I sit here, caught in the crossfire of my own mind. There's the voice of reason, the one that sounds like all my well-meaning friends, telling me to hold my ground. It speaks of dignity, of self-respect, of not giving him the satisfaction of seeing me break. It reminds me that he was the one who walked away, that the silence was his choice first. This voice is stern and logical, and for 47 days, it has been my commander. But now, there is another voice, a whisper that has grown into a desperate plea. It's the voice of my heart, and it doesn't care about dignity. It only cares about the terrifying possibility that we are both lost in a fog of our own making, and that I might be holding the only compass that could guide us back to each other. The fear of being alone at this age is a quiet, insidious thing. It's not the dramatic, frantic loneliness of a 20-something. It's a heavier, more settled dread. It's the thought of all the mornings to come, the coffee made for one, the empty side of the bed growing colder and colder. It's the sheer exhaustion at the prospect of starting over, the idea of navigating first dates, of telling my life story to a stranger, of building that fragile trust from scratch. It feels like an impossible mountain to climb. He knew my map. He knew the stories behind my scars, and the thought that I might have let that go, that I might have actively pushed away my last, best home out of a misplaced sense of pride, is a weight I'm not sure I can bear. The guilt is what's truly suffocating. I've spent all this time casting myself as the wronged party, the one who was left to pick up the pieces. But that's not the whole truth, is it? I see now how I participated in the silence long before it became official. I see every question I didn't ask, every fear I didn't voice, every time I chose the fragile peace of avoidance over the difficult work of connection. I let my own past hurts build a fortress around my heart, and when he couldn't find his way in, I blamed him for not trying harder. This wasn't just his misunderstanding, it was mine too. I was so busy protecting myself from being hurt that I failed to protect the most important thing we had, our ability to truly hear one another. Now I am paralyzed. Every fiber of my being screams at me to do something, to pick up the phone, to shatter this suffocating quiet. But my hand won't move. My fingers feel like lead. What would I even say? How do you begin to unravel a misunderstanding that has been solidifying for months, maybe even years? Breaking the silence feels like a monumental admission of defeat, a surrender of the one piece of power I thought I had left. Yet maintaining it feels like an act of profound self-destruction, like watching my own house burn down from the inside because I'm too proud to call for help. I'm trapped between two impossible choices, and the cost of either one feels like losing a part of myself forever. And what if this is it? What if this is the catastrophic mistake that defines the rest of my life? We hear about these moments, the turning points where people choose the wrong path and spend years looking back in regret. I always thought those moments would be loud and obvious, but this one is silent and subtle. It's a decision made by not making a decision. My sensible, rational adherence to the no-contact rule, the very thing that is supposed to be my salvation, could be the instrument of my deepest sorrow. I'm terrified that in 10 years I'll be sitting in this same quiet house, knowing with absolute certainty that all it would have taken was one moment of courage, one vulnerable phone call, to change everything. That is a terrifying legacy to create for yourself. This silence is no longer just an absence of his voice. It has become a living thing, a third presence in this house. With every day that passes, it grows stronger, more confident. It rewrites our history, erasing the memories of laughter and quiet understanding, replacing them with the narrative of our failure. It whispers to me that it's too late, that the chasm between us is too wide to cross now. It feeds on my fear and my pride. The longer I let it live, the more permanent it becomes. I feel like I'm in a race against time, but I'm the one who keeps adding hurdles to my own path, letting the misunderstanding calcify into an unchangeable fact. The quiet is no longer my fortress, it is my enemy. Ultimately, this battle forces me to ask a question I've been avoiding. What does it mean to be a strong woman? For years, I believed it meant being self-sufficient, impenetrable, never showing weakness. It meant having the strength to walk away and never look back. But what if real strength is something else entirely? What if it's the courage to admit you might be wrong? The strength to be vulnerable, to lay down your pride and risk everything for a chance at understanding, even if it means facing rejection? I don't know the answer. I'm afraid this isn't just about him anymore. It's about me. It's about deciding what kind of woman I want to be as I face the rest of my own life, with or without him. My eyes keep returning to the photograph on my phone, drawn by a force I can no longer resist. The detail that caught my eye is so mundane, so easily missed. It's a book tucked away on a shelf behind him, a small, dark blue hardcover. I know it instantly because I was the one who bought it for him. It was a book on communication, a gentle offering I had made months before the end, a quiet plea for us to find our way back to each other. During our last fight, I had thrown it in his face, metaphorically. I accused him of never even opening it, of not caring enough to try. He didn't deny it, he just looked tired. But in this picture, a sliver of a yellow bookmark is visible, sticking out from somewhere near the middle. He was reading it. All this time, I was certain he had dismissed my plea, but he hadn't. He was listening. That single yellow bookmark has dismantled my entire fortress of self-righteous anger. For 47 days, my pain has been my shield, my justification. I built a narrative where I was the one trying and he was the one who had given up. It was a simple, clean story that made the silence bearable, even noble. But that story is now a lie. The ground beneath my feet doesn't just feel unsteady. It has completely given way. It's a terrifying, dizzying sensation. The realization that the very foundation of your suffering is built on a falsehood. What else did I get wrong? What other words did I hear through the filter of my own defensiveness? My pride, the thing I was so carefully protecting with this silence, suddenly feels like the most foolish, childish thing in the world. It feels like the very thing that has cost me everything. Suddenly I can hear his words from that last conversation with a horrifying new clarity. When he said, "I feel like you don't see me anymore." I heard it as an attack, a way of blaming me for his own distance. But now, I wonder if it was a simple statement of fact, a confession of his own loneliness within our relationship. When he said, "I just need some time to think," I interpreted it as the cold, clinical preamble to an exit. What if it was just that? A genuine request for a pause from a man who was overwhelmed and trying to process things just like me. I was so consumed with my own fear of being abandoned that I couldn't see his pain. I saw a man walking away, but maybe he was just a man who was lost and didn't know how to ask for a map. The weight of these 47 days of silence now feels like a physical burden. Each day I chose not to call, not to write. I wasn't reclaiming my power. I was compounding the error. I was giving the misunderstanding time to grow, to harden, to become a truth that could never be undone. The silence wasn't a strategy for healing. It was a slow-acting poison, and I was willingly drinking it every single morning. The emotional limit I've been approaching has finally been reached and surpassed. The fear of reaching out and being rejected is still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it is now dwarfed by a far more profound and devastating fear, the fear of living the rest of my life, knowing that I let a misunderstanding destroy the most important love I have ever known. That is a regret I simply cannot survive. My hand feels impossibly heavy as I reach for my phone. It's no longer a choice between pride and connection. It's a choice between a life of quiet, hollow dignity and the slim, terrifying chance of truth. My thumb hovers over his name in my contacts list. My heart is a frantic drum against my ribs, a chaotic rhythm of fear and fragile hope. I don't know what I'm going to say. I have no script, no plan. All I have is the raw, aching clarity of this moment. The silence has to end. It has to be me. All the reasons not to, all the advice, all the well-meaning rules, they all fade into an insignificant hum. There is only one thought left, one single, terrifying, necessary purpose. I have to break the silence. I have to press this button, and I have to tell him I think we were both wrong. It's funny, isn't it? How we spend so much of our lives learning to be strong, and we come to believe that strength is a kind of hardness, an impenetrable wall. For 47 days, I was so proud of my fortress, of my ability to withstand the silence, to not crumble. But I see now that wasn't strength. That was just fear wearing a costume of dignity. True strength, I think, is something much quieter and far more terrifying. It's the strength to look at the ruins of something beautiful and have the courage to ask, did I help tear this down? It's the willingness to be utterly, completely vulnerable. To admit you might have been wrong, even if it changes nothing. It's choosing the possibility of truth over the certainty of a proud, lonely silence. I don't know what will happen next, but I know this act of reaching out is the strongest I've been in years. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding of all is the belief that love should be easy, that understanding should be effortless. We built a life on a shared language, but somewhere along the way, we each started speaking in code expecting the other to have the key. I wrapped my fears in silence, and he must have done the same. I created a story with a villain and a victim because it was easier than accepting the more complicated truth, that we were just two people who stopped knowing how to listen to the words behind the words. It's a painful thing to accept, that there was no great betrayal, only a slow, quiet erosion of connection that we both allowed to happen. We weren't enemies in a war. We were just two lonely people on opposite sides of a wall we built together, brick by painful brick. My finger is still hovering over his name. The call hasn't been made yet, but the silence in my heart has already been broken. And maybe that's the only part I can truly control. Whatever happens when I press this button, whether it leads to reconciliation or to the final, painful confirmation of the end, something has fundamentally shifted within me. I'm no longer a woman hiding in a fortress. I'm a woman walking out into the open, ready to face the truth, whatever it may be. It's a terrifying freedom. If you've ever found yourself in a silence so loud it deafens you, maybe you understand. Sometimes the most important conversation you can have is the one that admits you don't have all the answers. And the bravest step you can take is the one back toward a door you thought was closed forever.